Good, good for you.
Always. I'm doing better this time around.
Yeah, isn't it funny how the older we get, the better we do?
I know this next class I have to do is it's advanced teaching social studies.
Ooh,
Oh, interesting.
oh, you'll be fine. All the stuff you do with scouts, you'll be fine.
Hey, pretty soon you won't have to do any of that.
Yeah. Are we live?
We are live.
Okay. Good evening, and welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. If you've never had the pleasure of spending an evening with us before, let me tell you how this is going to work. We actually have, on the original request, we had 3 variances to hear tonight. We only have 2 because the petitioner withdrew the first one. So we're only hearing 2 requests for a variance. A variance is that you're asking this board to take an existing zoning rule and change it for your property. We would ask you, when you come up to the podium and state your name and address, that you tell us why not being granted this variance would be considered a hardship on you. This is a quasi-legal proceedings because should you not be granted your variance, you have the option of going to the Court of Common Pleas. That's why we have the best court reporter in Northwest Ohio with us, and she records everything you say. So you want to watch what you say because she gets it all. The meeting will be conducted that I will read your request for variance. The city will show us graphs and pictures and restate some of the obvious or some of the not so obvious things. We will then ask you to come to the podium, and as I said before, please state your name and address. And then we will ask you, you can tell us why you want to have this variance granted. And then we will ask questions. This will be part of the public hearing. We will go into a private hearing, although we're still going to be all sitting here and nobody has to go anyplace. And we will discuss it amongst ourselves before we vote. We will come out of the private and come back into the public. The secretary will call the roll and we will vote, and you will know immediately whether or not your variance was granted. Okay? All right. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the November 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Motion is passed. The first variance that we're going to be hearing is Ryan Brady of Brady Signs, and representing McDonald's has requested, excuse me, I forgot to swear you in. If you're going to be testifying or saying anything, you need to be sworn in. So if you think you're going to be saying anything, would you please stand and raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, consider yourself sworn in. If you change your mind and later and you want to be sworn in, I can do that too. Ryan Brady of Brady Signs and representing McDonald's has requested a variance to allow the construction of a 4-foot by 6-foot electronic message board sign, which would replace the existing 2-foot by 8-foot sign reader board sign on the legal non-conforming pylon sign at 1470 East Wooster Street. The sign was originally granted a variance on July 19th, 1978, to be added to the pylon sign and exceeded the maximum number of signs. Heather?
Thank you. So under section 150.66, outdoor advertising of the zoning code, E1, no more than 3 outdoor advertising structures shall be used for each business or structure and must be located on the same lot or premises. I'm mentioning this because just so you're aware, that already had a variance, as Madam Chairman mentioned before. I just wanted to share how that is not conforming. So the pylon height and then the additional signs, but again, it already had a variance. And then under section 150.70 talks about non-conforming signs under B1. And actually ordinary repairs, non-structural issues are allowed when it has a permit, which it did have a permit back from the 70s. Also, when I write you a letter, there's a little bit of a history, so I wanted to make sure that you had all that at your packet. So when the variance was originally granted on July 19th of 1978, it was for a 2-foot by 8-foot reader board sign, which is there now. So this is about an 8 square foot increase in that, which would need a new variance because, again, it exceeds that original size that was approved And also back then, they weren't very specific about variances, so I can't tell you what they actually approved as far as that being additional signage. I don't know if they already had 3 or if they were adding 2. I'm not really sure about that because it was very vague, but it does say a variance to allow the construction of an additional 2-foot by 8-foot sign on the existing pole in front of the building and to allow the construction of more signs than allowed by the zoning regulations. So again, that pylon is taller than the 25 feet, which is why it's non-conforming. Additional variances on the record for this property were issued on August 14th of 1991. A variance was approved to construct various additions to the existing building. An additional sign was also requested to be added to the pylon, which was denied at that time, but the additions were approved. On November 12th of 2003, a variance was approved to allow them to provide 35 parking spaces instead of the required 49 spaces. This allowed the removal of spaces in front of the building to add a bypass lane. So again, just wanted to give you some history on the property. There's an aerial view there of the parcel. Using pictometry, we show you, this is facing towards the north there, so that's the back. Another view, this would be of the side. And then the other side, this would be looking from Mercer. And then the actual front of the building. Here's existing pylon, a picture of that with the existing reader board. Here is currently there a wall sign, no changes to that, just wanted to show you the existing signage. This side of the building does not have any signage. This is just giving you a view of the back there of the drive-through. Those aren't considered signs since you can't see them from the right-of-way. And then here's the side of the building, or you could call it the front since it's towards Mercer, of another wall sign. And then here's a view of another pylon that is along Mercer. And then there's another view of the existing pylon. This rendering was part of your packet, showing again the current sign and then the proposed reader board. And that is it for that one. We did not receive any phone calls or written correspondence. An advertisement was placed in the newspaper of general circulation as required. A site notice was placed at the site. The other notices required by the Administrative Code were posted in the proper time and location. A letter was mailed, first class mail, to the tax mailing address of the owner and adjoining property owners. Therefore, all the procedure requirements for the hearing have been met.
Thank you. Is there someone here? Up there and state your name and address, please.
Nathan Glass. I'm with Brady Signs. Address is 701 Buckeye Lane in Sandusky, Ohio.
Here. Okay, now you wanted to explain to us why you need this variance?
Yeah, so my understanding is like she already stated that a variance was granted for the additional sign on the structure back in the late 70s. That was a common sign for the time period, obviously. Manual changeable copy board. Now we're fast forward to 2022. The ability to change messages has become much more simplified, obviously, by way of digital signage. And it's also a very effective marketing tool for continually changing promotions. The ownership group actually has 6 locations that are all doing an identical sign to this. Another one's actually here on Main Street in Bowling Green that'll be going up in the coming weeks. So the ability across all 6 locations to keep all branding, content creation for the same 4-foot height by 6-foot width is an effective marketing tool, because you can create one set of content, one set of images with your branding or with your promotions for the week or day, and push that content out to all 6 locations from an office anywhere in the United States. So the additional 8 square foot is, from my understanding, all that we're asking for, because a variance has already been granted for one additional sign on the structure.
In the hardship? If this variance were not to be granted, what would you consider to be your hardship?
The hardship right now is the ineffectiveness of marketing through the older manual changeable system, whereas you can, again, create content across all 6 locations, keep your branding and marketing message consistent, drive more revenue to the business. And right now, with staffing issues, having someone all the time go out there with a stick and letters is very challenging to be able to find the time to be able to do that. And you're not able to change that message nearly as frequently.
Anybody have any questions?
Is there anybody here from the ownership group? Would either of you like to comment? I mean, with all due respect to him, he has a vested interest in selling the sign and making the, I'd like to hear from the owner of the business as to why you guys want the sign up there and how it would benefit you or what your hardship is. have
Sarah, you want to
the
come up and be
podium.
sworn in,
Sorry to
please?
inconvenience you.
It's not reflecting that you didn't do a good job.
No.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth and hold nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, you want to start with your name and address, please?
Sure. Stephen Ball. You want the business address?
Whatever your home address.
Oh, home address, 813 Wilkshire in Waterville, Ohio.
Okay.
I guess the big thing that I see, like he mentioned, would be staffing, having somebody available right now with COVID to be able to go out there and do it. On top of that would just be the conditions, having somebody go out there, whether it's in the cold, being able to stay inside, do it inside the restaurant again, instead of going outside. That's really all I have to add.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Anybody have any other questions, comments? None? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Gentlemen?
It just seems reasonable. We're looking at an improvement of about 50 years of,
Yeah.
so it seems to make sense.
I wouldn't want anybody to have to go out in this cold.
Right.
Okay, we'll come back. May I have a motion, please?
Also move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Secretary, did you get that?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay. Will you call the roll, please?
I will. Mr. Bostorff,
Yes.
Ms. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes. Mr. Ostrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Waddle? Yes.
Request for your variance has been granted. The next and last request is from Dan Van Boris. He has requested a variance to allow the conversion of a single-family dwelling into a two-family dwelling, which is not permitted use in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning Classification at 332 Wallace Avenue.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Johnson is going to be recusing himself, so I ask that he move from the table.
Thank you. So under section 150.20 of the zoning code, this is what the property is zoned, R2 single family residential. Hard to read here, but basically a permitted use is a building or lot within R2 district may be used only for any use permitted in the R1. So then you go to R1, and that's when it lists the permitted use of single family residential. Under section 150.132, the powers of the board, D6, the board may also grant a variance in an R2 district for the construction of a two-family dwelling if it finds that there is a minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet and all bulk and density regulations in an R2 zone can be applied. And if it finds the evidence of either the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship or peculiar circumstances set forth in 1A above, or that the granting of the variance will be in the best interests of the neighborhood and community as set forth in 1B above. Continued under 1, in exercising its authority under this section, the board must find A, the existence of practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship, or where due to peculiar circumstances, strict enforcement will cause needless expense, difficulty, or hardship without serving any useful public purpose, or B, that the granting of a variance will be in the best interest of the neighborhood and community. Here's an aerial view of the property that shows you that neighborhood. And of course, back there is a pretty large city-owned facility. I also gave you another letter about the history and how this came to be into your seats here. So again, I wanted to provide some background information on the request to convert 332 Wallace from a single-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling. According to the file, it was a two-family dwelling several years ago, but as of 1971 records indicated the owner no longer rented it as a two-unit dwelling. So I gave you a copy of every document from the file and made them exhibits. So the first one is a copy of a variance, which was issued to construct a carport on May 8th, 1985. The motion stated, quote, a variance to allow the construction of a carport, which would encroach 3 feet into the required 10-foot side yard setback. That's Exhibit A. The second document, a zoning permit for a carport that actually was issued on May 13th of 1985. The use is marked single family, which is Exhibit B. A memo dated March 27th, 1997 from a former code enforcement officer indicated he had spoken to an appraisal company to confirm the use, and the former owner, Ms. Shaw, who said the house was used as single family since 1971. Prior to that, it was used as a duplex. That's Exhibit C. An email dated March 9th, 2012 records a conversation that a former administrative assistant had with the realtor about having trouble selling the house as single family. The realtor was again told the use as a duplex was discontinued several years ago, and that's Exhibit D. A memo dated September 26, 2016 records a phone call that I had with the realtor who asked about the use being allowed as a duplex, of which I stated it is as single-family residence, Exhibit E. This address came up recently, I would say around late fall, after receiving inquiries from neighbors about the legal use. So attached is the recent history regarding that. An email dated October 18th, 2021, with my response attached from Sandy Rowland, who was a former at-large council member, who said a neighbor had called her asking if the upstairs could be an apartment, and she was inquiring if they could do so. That's Exhibit B. An email dated December 16, 2021, which I inquired with Mike Marsh, city attorney, to confirm the legal use of the property was single family. That's Exhibit G. The email also has Mr. Marsh's response. This was a result of Bill Harold, the fourth ward council member, asking me about the use of the property and subsequently requesting Mr. Marsh's opinion. He had indicated the new owner contacted him explaining the vast improvements he had made to the property and that he had purchased the property based on its design as a duplex. He also said he confirmed with someone in the zoning office that it could be used as a duplex. Mr. Harold wanted to know if there were options for the use based on Mr. Marsh's opinion. Also on December 16, 2021, I emailed Mr. Harold indicating the utility business office has one utility account for the property, and the auditor's website shows the land use as single family, Exhibit H. Mr. Marsh also had been talking with the property owner and informed him he could apply for variance, which he chose to do so. So again, I have all those exhibits attached. And we did receive one phone call from a neighbor based on the letters that were sent, and I believe he is here tonight. So I don't have anything else to add to that, and we did not receive any correspondence from any other neighbors in writing. Using pictometry, here's a view of the property. Here's looking at the side of the house. Here's the back of the house. And then here's the other side of the property, a little hard to see. We got a lot of grown up there screening. Here's some pictures then of the property. Here's the front. Here's looking towards the front and side there of the house. Here's the other side. A little closer to the back. Here's the back of the house. You can see that staircase heading up there. Here's the sketch that was in your packet that was submitted by the applicant. And then here's another sketch. There's a down and up sketch. It says down. And then here's the up sketch. Also, since the packets went out, I had a zoning board member ask me for any other properties around that neighborhood that may be a legal non-conforming use. So in other words, a use that was not single family in the R2 single family district. So I did create, let me get here, there's that part. There it is. Okay, so I created this aerial view. I know it's hard to read, so I have copies here tonight. But basically what I did was I looked through the files, basically around that area. I didn't go much further out because that, quite frankly, took a lot of time to go through those files. Okay, so what we did was we first labeled whether it was potentially 2 units as far as the file goes, 3 units, et cetera. And then the second number would be the actual address. So for example, to the west of this property, we have that as a legal non-conforming 2-unit dwelling. And we have the main address is 338 Wallace. If you go 1, 2, 3 homes over, the 4th home, those are both also a duplex. So 418 and 424 Wallace. To the south of Wallace in that same block, there are no legal non-conforming uses that we're aware of on file. If you go further to Maple Street, you'll see that we found a duplex at 315 North Maple, one at 219 North Maple, and one at 211 North Maple. Then we went to Worcester. You'll see we found a duplex at 508 Worcester, West Worcester. One, actually, that's a 4-unit dwelling at 338 West Worcester. And then looping back up, we went to North Grove. So we found a 4-unit dwelling there at 205 North Grove. Across the street from there, a 3-unit dwelling, 202 North Grove, and another 3-unit or a triplex, if you want to call it that, at 134 North Grove. Heading further north, we have on the west side of North Grove, a duplex that's 307 North Grove and a 3-unit dwelling at 313 North Grove. And heading back north on the east side, corner of Clay and North Grove, we have a duplex addressed as 225. I believe that's Clay. It could be North Grove though, so I apologize. I didn't specify that one, but it's right on the corner. And then heading to Conneaut, we have 311 Conneaut and 317. Both of those are duplexes. So I hope that helps satisfy that question or give you an idea of that basically immediate neighborhood of some other legal nonconforming uses that have, to our knowledge, not been discontinued. So I think that's it. I just wanted to apologize if there was any incorrect information from the zoning office. Our administrative assistant vaguely recalls the conversation of the owner and applicant calling, but she doesn't remember that sort of detail. And she would be very surprised if she did say anything that was inconsistent with the file. So, but she does apologize too if anything was misconstrued, excuse me. Just wanted to make that clear though, that it was quite a while ago, so she doesn't remember the details. An advertisement was placed in the newspaper of general circulation as required. A site notice was placed at the site. The other notices required by the administrative code were posted in the proper time and location. A letter was mailed first class mail to the tax mailing address of the owner and adjoining property owners. Therefore, all the procedural requirements for the hearing have been met.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Van Voorst? State your name and address, please.
Dan Van Voorst, and my address is 615 Pearl Street in Bowling Green. I'm going to add to your paper.
Okay.
I got a neighbor that sent something this evening.
Okay.
To give you just a little background, if I ramble on too much, tell me. My name is Dan Van Voorst, born and raised in Bowling Green. I currently work for the state of Ohio, law enforcement. How the rentals fit in, I guess my grandpa, Clay Street 216, which is up there. He built a couple of them years and years ago. My parents, we own John Deere dealership, but my parents have had rentals over the years, so I guess I'm just following suit. Which my mother used to be on the zoning board. Joan will attest to that. So I remember as a kid riding around with her looking at properties before each meeting, and now here I am. So anyway, last May 2021, 338 Wallace, individual I know, called and said, "Hey, are you interested in buying a duplex from me?" So I said, "Sure." So I went ahead and bought that. And early on, I'm standing in the driveway of 338 Wallace, talking to the two tenants that live there, and I'm looking at 332, and you can barely pull in the driveway because the trees and everything are growing half into the driveway. And I mean, you look past the trees, it's a great house, but just everything had grown up. And, you know, I asked a little bit, like, you know, why is this empty and the history behind it? And I know the neighbors, they did a great job over the years of keeping the bushes trimmed as much as possible. So I found out Mr. Shaw, he grew up there. He lives in Columbus now. His mother had passed away, and he was a current owner. I sent him a letter and said, "Hey, are you interested in selling your duplex on Wallace?" So a couple months went by, I ended up buying it. And early on, I mean, it's a duplex. Mr. Shaw, everything, it's a duplex. He lived there as growing up. And when you look at it, there's not an interior stairway. There's no connecting. There was 2 meters, old meters bases from the city on the outside of it, 2 service panels inside the garage, inside the basement. So there was every indication that it's a duplex. The phone call, and I in no way throwing anyone under the bus, but you know, I talked to the electric department. Called zoning, and that conversation, I said, hey, I'm looking at 332 Wallace Street. Can I leave it as a duplex? And she explained that when a property is a duplex and you change it back into a single family, you can't convert it back into a duplex. And that if it's a duplex now, that it's grandfathered under, then it can remain as a duplex. What I think our conversation, looking back, was maybe superficial. Neither of us looked into the file, and it wasn't until December when we found out the history actually behind it. So that conversation, you know, I walked away thinking the city of Bowling Green zoning said, as long as you don't change it, you're fine. But again, I think it was more informational as opposed to either of us looking in the file back to see a letter that Mrs. Shaw sent years ago. So anyway, so I continued ahead thinking, you know, you look at a property and, you know, what's best for the community, what's best for the neighborhood. A duplex, you're going to have 2 furnaces, 2 air conditioners, 2 kitchens, I mean, your expenses obviously double. So you have to take that in consideration. But, you know, after looking, you know, we had a couple people come in and look to say, is there a way to put a stairway, or even the outside stairway? We talked about enclosing that in, but there wasn't a feasible way to make it a single family. So we went ahead and Schick Electric came in and put new 2 meter bases, replacing the old ones outside, and 2 service panels inside, 1 for up, 1 for down, and new electric throughout the house. Gerhardt Plumbing came in, put 2 new furnaces in, new ductwork, new central air units. And so then we're up to about December at this point. And then that's when Mr. Harold gave me a call and so graciously said the day of the Gerhardt got doing all that, like, hey, we might have a zoning issue that needs to be resolved here. So I talked to Mr. Marsh again, Mr. Harold, and came up with the options, what needed to be done. And so then, you know, I went ahead and filed for you guys to review it here. And looking at, like, and talking to the neighbors, you know, if you have a single family, you're gonna have mom and dad, kids. A duplex, like 338 Wallace, there's a gentleman lives downstairs and a gentleman lives upstairs. So really it sounds backwards, but with a duplex, you usually will have less people, less cars than you would if the single family. And I always look at parking. I was on the traffic commission for 2 terms, and Mr. Kleinert was retired from ODOT, and he would always argue roads are for driving, not parking. So I looked at Wallace Street thinking, is there parking available? You know, yes, there is, but I realized 338 Wallace, there's a place, that driveway there, you can park 2 or 3 cars, and plus it has a 2-car garage. So I thought, well, we can, whoever stays upstairs parks in that driveway, which is 20 feet from their door, which is closer than parking out front or even in the driveway. And then redoing the driveway, the existing driveway, and whoever's downstairs can use that driveway. So I thought of it that way, like, okay, you don't have to utilize on-street parking. You can take care of it that way as well. So I filed appeal. I'm not an appeal, you know, a variance for you guys to look at it. And in no way, I think it's important that, you know, we didn't bully our way or just ignore the rules. We did our due diligence, thought I was doing right. But then I found out a little roadblock. We got to have the zoning addressed. The neighborhood, like that, that's the technical way, which you found more than I did. I drove around. I thought, well, you know, what's this neighborhood? Is there duplexes or triplexes? And I came up with 8. You came up with more, but like almost a block radius of that property, there's obviously other duplexes and triplexes. So she found more. And talking to the neighbors, there's some here tonight. They obviously speak as well. And then Mr. Giro that lives at across the street, 325 Wallace, sent an email tonight that I passed on. Hardship. I don't know. I mean, I didn't, and I thought, don't bring up the fact that, you know, the funds have been spent for 2 furnaces as opposed to 1, or 2 air conditioners and 2 kitchens, but I guess you could utilize that as a hardship. I think the sad part would be not being able to utilize the upstairs. I mean, it's sat empty. So, you know, why allow it to continue to sit empty? Let's make the house usable and add some life. That's a couple of the neighbors had said, kind of nice what you've done by fixing it up, but it's more of just to have life as opposed to looking across the street and seeing an empty residence. So I don't know if that's a hardship or not, but
Okay.
so I just ask if we can, I mean, structurally it's a duplex, but legally we could do whatever needs to be to, you know, so we can change it or continue it as a duplex.
I have one quick question. According to Marsh's email, he said Mr. Shaw indicated that was single family, has been that way since the 70s. You said that he said it was a duplex?
Yes, Mr. Shaw, yeah. But I will say, you know, he grew up there and always have known it as a duplex, but you know, I don't know that he had contact with his mother for the last few years, so that might clarify things.
Is there anyone else here who would like to testify before we go any further? No? Okay. Would you like to come to the podium, please, sir, and state your name and address?
I'm not a good speaker.
That's okay.
So at the beginning, if I insult you, I didn't mean to.
All right, I'm hard to insult, so just go ahead. But don't forget to give us your name and address.
Because I had a conversation with some other people. And lo and behold, said, you insulted me twice already in the conversation. And I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. We have thick skins on this board.
Oh, good.
Want to give us your name and address?
William Shaheen, 324 Wallace Avenue.
Thank you.
I met Dan on the first or the second day in front of his property, that one in question. And he seems to be a very nice guy. So he said, I bought this and I'm gonna run it twice, and I tried to indicate to him that that's not so, because I lived there since 1964, and it never was 2 dwellings. But beside the point, listening to him, he said he's gonna put a driveway straight through so it'll line up with his garage. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Then later on, I find out that he intended to take that silly tree that cost me about $200 a year for leaf cleaning. So that's good. And in the past, I discussed a fence that Mrs. Shaw had on the line, but it was rusty. And she wanted to change. So I thought, you know, I love nature. So I found Wood County Conservation have a bunch of arborvitae trees, seedlings. So I go discuss it with them and I say how big these things grow. And they said, well, You put it 18 inches off of the lot line, 18 inches apart, they should be pretty good. They'll give you a nice solid fence. So I discussed it with Mrs. Shaw and Noni Fortney. Fortney was on the other side of mine, on the east side. We all agreed that that's a good idea. That way they don't have to put a fence. So we all be happy. So I did plant trees, except the 18 inches didn't grow. They grew to about 20 foot. So I'm sorry about that, but that's how we did. So I thought about this here, and him putting the driveway in is gonna improve the sight of the area and is gonna make it a better looking place. So, and he's gonna cut the tree down, he promised that. So to me, having a paved driveway and a clean straight to it, except I wonder if the city's gonna allow him to put a driveway in. That's kind of a problem. And the other problem is the people upstairs, they're gonna park over next door. What happens if he sells that property? Now what they do? So they're gonna come over here maybe, or he have to build a garage in the back. And I don't know if that have crossed anybody's mind. Anyway, the more I thought about it, I don't want to be a nasty neighbor, but I don't want to lose my property either. But hey, he's going to improve his property. That's all right. He promised that he's going to give me, or he's going to run it to very nice people. Well, I've hired and fired in my lifetime probably about 800, trying to guess right every time. It is not quite the way it is. So, but I decided, because he's a nice guy, seems to be, and he keeps his word. And I thought, well, if he puts it in writing, I'm okay with it. If he decides that he's gonna cut the tree, put the driveway in, and we get along fine. As far as the tenant, there's no way. Talking about tenants, where Noni Fortney passed away. Somebody bought the house. They rent it to 3 female students, or 3 females, let's put it, not students, 3 females. And they kept us all night. Not to say the language that they use, the company they bring. They left, somebody else bought the house. These people come in and they dug a hole in the yard and they start lighting a fire, once in a while. They're up till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. But that doesn't really bother me. Till one day I decided I want to look. They cut all the trees, took the branches off and burned them. So it kind of tells me I don't want kids around me. That's my experience. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, sir, and you certainly did not insult anybody. You did a very nice job, so thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to make a comment? And I think you two were sworn in, so, okay.
My name is Scott Haycock. My wife Elizabeth Ladd Haycock. She has lived in Bowling Green almost all of her life.
May we have your address, please?
Okay, I'm sorry, 319 Wallace.
Thank you.
We live diagonally across from this property. And Elizabeth actually grew up at the corner of Maple and Wallace. So she's pretty familiar with the neighborhood. And she knew Scott Shaw, so quite honestly, I think she wants to talk.
Okay,
Well, Scott and Greg were contemporaries, are contemporaries of mine. Greg's gone, but Scott's still with us.
Can you,
And,
can you
yeah.
take your mask
Oh,
down
sure,
because the
sure,
court
sure, sure.
reporter can't
sorry about that.
get,
Um,
it's a cute mask, but she has to hear what you're saying.
The
Uh,
two dogs.
Scott and Greg were contemporaries of mine, and Scott was actually in my high school class, so I've known the Shaws for years. And I just think the fact that Mr. Van Voorhis has purchased the property and definitely fixed it up, and it's so nice to know that there's actually going to be people living there. And there are a lot of other duplexes and triplexes around there. So it's not like he's coming in and asking to have a duplex where there are no others around. And I do believe that he will be careful about his tenants, because anybody who lives nearby will know where he is and will, you know,
We'll let him know.
will come after him. So, like I said, I just think that he's already made all these improvements to the property. There was some misunderstanding. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Scott represented that it's based on my knowledge of him throughout. So I just think it's a good idea. I
We
hope it,
support it.
and I hope it can work out with Bill and Phyllis. It sounds like he's kind of come around to thinking that it's not such a bad idea. Is that right, Bill? Okay, so I think we're kind of all on the same page now, which is wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Harold, I believe you're getting up, so you want to come and say something? You want to take your mask down so we can
absolutely.
understand you, please?
You may be the only person that would ever ask me to take the mask off.
Well,
William Harold, 1030 Conneaut Avenue. I appreciate your coming up, Sheehan, and did a great job. And I was wondering for some sense of closure, if it hasn't been done already, whether you, Mr. Van Voorhis, I don't know if you signed anything for Mr. Sheehan. If you did not, this is being recorded and is a quasi-legal body. So if you would come up and make the assurances in this meeting, that would pretty much take the place of writing something down if you haven't done it. And I think that would be even beyond the good faith that you've shown. And I know it's what you're planning on anyway. So it'd be kind of like tying up a loose end to allay the concerns of Mr. Sheehan. Would you be, okay, thank you.
I think we can take that as he's agreed to it because we just all heard him say absolutely, so.
Great.
It's recorded.
Then,
It's not on the mic, not on the microphone, he's not on the record.
anyway, that's, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, members of the board, do you have any questions or comments?
Open session?
It's an open session.
Sounds to me like it was just a miscommunication or lack thereof. If there's not been any, I mean, if there's no internal staircase, I don't know how anyone would walk in that property and think that it's single family. Especially if there's also 2 electric meters. So I think it was just a misunderstanding.
As I understand that, the issue I have is that we voted down a similar request over by the university. It was also set up as a duplex. The guy bought it as a retirement property, lived in half, to find out later that it was not zoned as a duplex. And we denied him as well after it was in the shape of a duplex.
Do you remember the reason or rationale why it was voted down? I would
Because
think that would
of
be
the
clear.
zoning. It was zoned that way. He bought it thinking it was a duplex, but he didn't do his due diligence to find out it wasn't allowed. I think we have a very similar situation here. And I'm worried about the precedents that will set if we do allow it.
Chris,
Even
was
though I
that the,
you understand the issue.
was that the property on Poe?
No, it was Cross University. I want to say,
I believe it was Troop.
yeah, true. I was thinking Trooper Biddle over that way.
I guess I would, I mean, respectfully, I mean, I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I'd want to know the specifics of that property. I mean,
It
mean,
was
when
he bought it as a duplex. He thought it was a duplex, and then he found out later when he was moving out of it, that it wasn't a duplex. He couldn't sell it or use it as a duplex, even though it was already divided in two.
I think my concern with this is that it has not been used as a duplex since 1971, this current property. That's a long time not to have it. So every record has it as a single-family dwelling.
If you start allowing it now, who says you just don't buy a house and just turn it into a duplex, even though it's zoned single family?
to me, the difference is, you can obviously tell that I don't have a problem with it, but I just want to try to explain my case. The gentleman that owned it lived in the bottom floor and just chose not to rent out the top floor, is what it sounds like.
But then there's a similar situation. True.
I can't speak to that because I appreciate your.
The problem, like I said, the precedence we set is zoned single family. If we just allow, just because the person before it did something that wasn't allowed to continue,
I
set that
understand.
precedent. Anybody could buy a house, turn it into a duplex and say, hey, duplex.
I understand that. I think you also take into consideration the good faith of the person who's purchasing the property.
Well, I understand that.
If you believe that, he's doing something intentionally to,
Well, it's even accidental, when you buy a house, you have the due diligence to make sure that's.
I don't
correct.
disagree. I don't disagree.
And he didn't, because it's not.
I don't disagree, but go ahead. Judy has something.
Okay,
to say.
no, I just wanted to see if we had other opinions or other thoughts.
Sure.
Please.
No, I have to admit, I agree with Matt, in this particular situation. And I think back and Chris, I can't remember, and hopefully I wasn't, well, actually, hopefully I was gone that particular day, if I don't remember it. I just remember the discussion about the one on Poe, and that was, I felt that gentleman was, he was blatant. I'm sorry, that situation was just blatant.
That's funny. I don't
Where
remember
this
one on
is-
Poe.
Yeah, where this one, I agree with you, Matt. It's just set up, and I guess one of the questions that I did have is why that metering, or it's to one address, but are there 2 meters? Were there ever 2 meters on that account,
The account is a single account,
right?
not 2 addresses.
I understand that, but I just.
And it's
didn't-
not illegal to have 2 meters. That's part of
Okay.
the issue too. I mean, there's many people that will have one for their garage as a workshop and, they,
Yeah.
I can't say for sure what that use is and they don't ask the use.
Oh, that's fine. I just wondered.
Well,
You need to come back up here if you're going to speak.
yeah, I have a question.
And I'm not sure what pictures you got, but initially there's 2 exterior meters outside, and inside there's 2 meter boxes. And it's my understanding, again, you guys have it in front of you, but initially, I think in 1959, it was remodeled. And I think then it was a duplex up until when Mrs. Shaw wrote a letter asking to say, I don't want it as a duplex. And then, and you might remember more, but my understanding, the caretaker lived upstairs for a while, so she didn't rent it, but a caretaker stayed up there for a while. So I think the fact that my understanding it was a duplex, she changed it to single family, might be a little different than the other situations.
The question I have for you, Dan, is when you bought it, there was no interior stairwell to get to the upstairs. So to
No.
get to the upstairs, you would have to go outside, correct?
Yes.
Second question, there are 2 electric meters. One, to your knowledge, 1 meter goes to a panel for the downstairs and 1 goes to the upstairs?
Panel upstairs. yeah.
Okay, so it was,
Well, the
those
picture only
pictures-
shows 1 meter. Only 1 meter on the
I mean-
property.
when you bought it, were there 2 meters on the property?
Yep.
When
And
you,
did you guys get the pictures of the old?
Whatever
Yes.
pictures were submitted, I see the box, but only 1 meter.
I only see one
Well,
meter,
there's
too.
2, that's a 1 meter with 2 meter heads. In the
Yeah.
old days, you would have one box for,
Chris, I think
Two
if you look at the two side by side, I think the one on the left, you can see the two separate meters. Where the one on the right then is the new combined,
Oh, the front one right here.
Yeah.
right?
He put in, new- there you
See
go.
this
Yeah.
one?
Right, and if you look at then the two boxes down below,
This is the new stuff they're shopping in.
yes, they're separate.
can't
Two,
find the
the new, I don't say the new way, but now it's separate boxes or, back in June, it's one box with 2 meters. There was only one city meter in, the other one was empty
So there was no electricity.
upstairs.
At
no.
all.
But there was 2 places for where a meter was. And then,
and definitely the two different boxes downstairs.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anything
Are there
else?
any more questions for Mr. Van Voorst?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, please? Certainly, you want to come back up here, please, so we can hear
Oh,
you, so,
let me just address the tree. So I cut all kinds of stuff down. I'm sorry to bore you, but I left the tree thinking he would like the tree. I didn't want to change it too much and come to find out he wanted the tree removed. So I did do wrong there.
okay.
That's all.
Ma'am, you want to come back up here so you're on mic, so we can,
And I wouldn't run too far away if she's gonna ask you a question.
I just wanted to ask Dan, when you purchased the property, there were two kitchens, is that correct? One up and one down? Okay. So it was obviously used as a duplex at some
it
time.
was prior to 1971, yes, I don't think
Okay.
that's in question, it was.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
Thank you. Anything else? Members of the board, do you have any more questions or comments? Okay, well, I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. Gentlemen,
Well, I just have a hard time doing it just, once again, the same reason we voted for Troop is just setting the precedence of letting the neighborhood, anybody put in a duplex. Which is the same problem we ran into Troop. It was 2 separate units, 2 separate entrances, 2 separate kitchens. And we denied him then as well. I have a hard time voting yes for this one when we've already told somebody else exact same situation, no.
I don't remember Troop. Hopefully I was not on the board at the time, but we take each one by itself and decide on its own merits. I have a problem since 1971. This has not been used as a duplex. And every record that we currently have shows that it is not a duplex, that it is a single family.
Well, and to be honest with you, as I read through all this and heard some other things before, it's like I have 2 different stories. I mean, I know Mr. Rudder, and why I'd never believe what handicap he told me he was on the first tee. I sincerely believe he thought it was being used that way, and obviously you did not believe that or didn't see that. So, that's where I've kind of struggled, and I just think, again, as Matt said before, it was pretty clear. I certainly am troubled a little bit by the couple of notices by the realtors at various times who recognize they have a hard time selling it as a single family, particularly when you can only use half the house. Had to be a pretty small house if you were only using
We
the
can
one
only use
floor.
the top for an in-law suite or something.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And you can only get to it if you go outside.
Right.
That's
So
better
I
for your
don't-
in-laws.
Right.
I think that the other thing that I want to take into consideration too is I applaud people who are willing to do things appropriately. And I think Dan has really shown that he's willing to put in the time and money. And I realize that you don't want to, just because somebody's willing to spend money on a property, allow them to do anything they want to do. But to me, the fact that he's already done it shows that he was planning on doing that anyway, not doing it because somebody ordered him to do it. And we also have a housing issue in this town. People want, affordable, nice homes. We've heard from the neighbors that approve of it. There's I don't think there's any precedence being set or not set when you can look at a map and see other duplexes and triplexes in the area. I don't feel like it's oversaturated or undersaturated. So if you look at it individually, to me, I don't have a problem with it. And Chris, I respectfully, I totally understand where you're coming from. I absolutely do. I absolutely do. I just feel differently.
Well, I agree at some point, I've seen the letters that, President's residents, sent saying how great a landlord he is, and I believe he's a good guy, but, I can't vote for a variance like this just based on the fact that he's a good guy. We gotta follow what the zoning code gives us. And like I said, the presidents that we had in the past, I can't vote for it, that we told somebody else no for the exact same situation.
Any further discussion?
I don't think so.
If not, we'll go back into public hearing and may I have a motion?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Get that?
I did, I believe. It was Chris,
Yeah.
correct? Okay, all right.
Will the secretary call the roll?
Sure. Waddle, yes. Ostrowski,
No.
Ennis,
No.
Bostorff,
Yes.
It is a tie vote, which means your variance was not granted. You have the right to go to the Court of Common Pleas and take it there. Okay, is there any other lobby visitation?
I do want to make sure you're aware of the zoning code draft. I sent you a link to that. There is a website dedicated to that, so I want to make sure you're able to review that, hopefully. And I don't know if I told you yet, but on February 16th, which is a Wednesday, we do have a presentation by the consultant Zone Co. about those articles 1, 2, 3, and 7 of the draft zoning code at 6:30 PM at the Veterans Building in City Park. So hopefully that's enough lead time, hopefully that you may be able to attend and answer any questions or ask any questions, I should say, and then provide any comments. Additionally, we do on our website do have a comment form you can fill in, or you can email me anytime, ask me questions, and we will look forward to hearing your comments.
And I would also encourage you, because it's very important that we have the public's input on the revised zoning code. So I would really encourage you all to study it, look at it, and be sure and share your opinion. And if you can, come on the February 16th meeting. And now I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Said
And-
zoning code meeting at the Veterans Building at 6:30.
Yes.
Yeah.
16.